Between 2020 and 2022, Austrian open access operator WESTBahn sold their older Stadler KISS models to Germany's Deutsche Bahn for use on Intercity routes, and after a few years of use, Deutsche Bahn are, well, selling them again. So there must be something wrong with them, right? We'll be taking a ride on one of these trains from Stuttgart in southern Germany down to Switzerland's largest city, Zurich, to see whether this decision is justified and what the future holds for these sleek intercity trains. Now join me as the journey continues. Good morning and welcome to what remains of Stuttgart Hbf, or Stuttgart's main station. Safe to say it isn't looking in the best of conditions right now, but there's a good reason for it. The station, which opened in 1922, is currently in the middle of a huge renovation project called Stuttgart 21, which aims to convert it from a terminal above ground station into a through underground station, meaning that most areas are more or less inaccessible, including the main hall here, which is still operational for the Stuttgart S-Bahn. Started in 2010 and originally expected to be completed in December 2025, this has since been revised to December 2026 or even 2027, which is not too surprising given the lack of progress here and on recent visits. We'll instead have to head west to access the mainline platforms 1 to 16, and for those who have access, the Deutsche Bahn First Class Lounge is still present, but only flexible first class tickets and Bahn bonus status grants access, so my options are either to sit in the waiting area here, or, the preferred choice, head to the platforms. At this time of morning, it's pretty quiet as you can see, but fortunately, you can still grab a bite to eat and a coffee from the temporary shops and outlets set up on the platform concourse. Stuttgart Hbf is a dead end, and a lot of trains, such as this RE service, are through trains that don't terminate here, and thus need to reverse as part of their journey, hence the need for the Stuttgart 21 rebuild. As well as national Deutsche Bahn ICE long distance services, Stuttgart Hbf also offers a fair amount of international services too, such as this ÖBB service from Klagenfurt to Frankfurt am Main. This makes Stuttgart Hbf one of the busiest stations in Europe, despite the ongoing Stuttgart 21 works, with over 93 million passengers entering and exiting annually. Another one of Stuttgart's international services is R1 Today, which will be taking us all the way to Zürich Hauptbahnhof as IC 181 at 0616. The IC or Intercity brand is the second highest tier of service offered by Deutsche Bahn, sitting just below its flagship ICE services. Many services are operated by double-decker IC2 Bombardier twin-deck sets, which are rather controversial for a number of reasons, but the IC2 train we'll be taking today is something both new and different, at least for Deutsche Bahn's IC services. Speaking of which, our train is pulling in now. Deutsche Bahn currently operates 17 6 and 4-car 200 km/h capable Stadler KISS electric multiple units, the 9 4-car trains entering service with Deutsche Bahn at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, between Rostock, Berlin and Dresden. The 8 6-car units then entered service in December 2022 on the route we'll be taking today between Stuttgart and Zurich, owing to issues authorising the twin-deck sets for use in Switzerland, the KISS trains being authorised for use in both Germany and Switzerland in addition to Austria. Deutsche Bahn acquired these trains from Austrian open access operator WESTBahn after the operator purchased brand new KISS 3 sets with better financing arrangements, which I've already reviewed on the channel, being the mainstay of their core route between Vienna and Salzburg. These trains are still used on this route by Deutsche Bahn quite regularly even after the sale, but I'll come back to this later as there's quite an interesting story behind it. As much as I love the WESTBahn livery, I think the IC colour scheme looks amazing on these trains, but what do you think? Each 6-car KISS contains 5 second-class double-decker carriages and a first-class one, which I'll be travelling in today. As with most Stadler designs, retractable sections are installed to provide level boarding in some areas, though this isn't the case with the section here and most other platforms in Germany for that matter. If you can as well, I recommend going to the top deck for better views, though it's still fairly dark outside at the moment. Despite first class being in a 2x2 layout, the overall ambience looks fantastic. This used to be branded as Plus when the units were with WESTBahn, and feature mainly table seating with some airline seating next to the stairs. This was subsequently corrected on the 10 KISS 2 sets, which instead feature an improved 2x1 seating layout in first class. As we get settled in, it's worth noting that Deutsche Bahn fitted more larger luggage racks as part of the refurbishment of these units after transferring from WESTBahn, which compensates for the small overhead luggage storage as is common with double-decker trains. We have a number of stops on our journey today, mostly in southern Germany, as we work our way out of Baden-Württemberg and towards the Swiss border just past Singen. From there, we have one last call at Schaffhausen before we arrive into Zürich Hauptbahnhof, our final stop, after 3 hours and 10 minutes of travel time covering a distance of 232 kilometers. We depart Stuttgart Hauptbahnhof on time at 16 past 6 AM Central European time. Well, it's still mostly dark as we arrive at our first stop of Böblingen around 20 minutes after departure, and at this time of morning it's pretty quiet as is to be expected. Anyway, let's hop back on board and check out more of the train's interior. For these trains to be sold, it must be pretty bad, right? Well, the seat's actually okay for a journey of around 3 hours. The ergonomic design and adequate padding is pretty good, but is it first class worthy? Probably not. Foldable armrests are located on the aisle side and the middle of the seats, the latter being raised to reveal 2 standard European power sockets. The overall legroom is okay, though I don't think I'd be saying this if someone was sat opposite me. There's also a slight recline by pulling on the lever here and sliding yourself to adjust this as you wish. Each table section is foldable to allow easy movement in and out of the seat, and just next to it is a small personal litter bin with a QR code stuck on top to take you to the Deutsche Bahn online portal, which is accessible with the free Wi-Fi, which is pretty fast. The seating areas contain coat hooks at the window side located just underneath the seat reservation displays, and as with the premium ICE trains, there are specific seats reserved for those with a Bahn bonus status too. And finally, draw-down blinds are present at each window, which partially blocks out the harsh sunlight. Not that this applies to us at the moment. As you can see, not much has really changed from when the units were with WESTBahn, though I'd argue not much needed to change. If I had complaints, it would be the seating layout and overhead luggage space, but definitely not so bad as to sell them. So, why are the trains being sold? Well, as mentioned earlier, Deutsche Bahn acquired these trains from WESTBahn, an Austrian open access operator. As part of the sale, the maintenance of these trains is carried out by Stadler in Vienna, which has not only proved costly for Deutsche Bahn, but also time-consuming to get them out of maintenance and into service on their regularly scheduled routes in East Germany. That being said, Deutsche Bahn has successfully capitalised on the opportunity. At the time of recording, the trains still operate overnight IC passenger services from Vienna to Stuttgart, Berlin and Rostock, as opposed to running empty, and these have proved rather popular given reservations are not compulsory, and it stops in numerous cities along the way. Would you ever try it? I don't think I could personally. The KISS sets also have much less capacity than the twin-deck sets Deutsche Bahn use on most of their IC services. Fortunately, at this time of morning, it's not a massive issue for me on this trip. Anyway, it's now well over an hour into the journey, and it's fortunately starting to get lighter as we continue to travel through Baden-Württemberg towards the Swiss border. As I mentioned earlier, this route doesn't really allow the KISS's true speed potential to be reached, as the highest speed I saw was close to 130 km per hour, or 79 miles per hour, which isn't much considering this train can do 200 km per hour where line speeds permit. That being said, the ride quality is impeccable and definitely made it a lot easier on me as I dealt with only being on a few hours of sleep. We then pull into Tuttlingen, a town lying in the valley of the upper Danube River on both sides of the stream, which is a great link for the Danube Valley and the Black Forest if you fancy a day out when the weather's a lot better than this. As I mentioned before, all KISS trains are double-deckers, though annoyingly Stadler's design means getting around the entire train step-free is not entirely possible, given the vestibules are only accessible using the stairs. Here's first class on the lower deck if you're curious, which is also a dedicated quiet zone. The layout is exactly the same and the views aren't as good, but the overhead luggage space is a lot more generous and it's generally quieter as you would expect. Second class is again the same as when the units were with WESTBahn, the main difference to first being the inclusion of airline style seating in addition to the table seating, which makes you question why Deutsche Bahn didn't modify the 7 KISS 1 units to at least make first class noticeably different to standard. I'm sure someone will be able to tell me below in the comments. One coach also has a dedicated family zone, and towards the end of each second class coach you'll find small bistro areas which contains a coffee machine and a vending machine which sells cold drinks and snacks. This accepts both cash and card payments. There is also restaurant style seating in dedicated areas, with this particular area appearing to be reserved for staff who I presume run the service? No one was to be seen though. It was early in the morning, so I opted to get a bottle of water, and I've of course linked the menu and prices in the below description.
Willkommen. Bitte auf Bestätigung warten.
Two standard toilets are also equipped in each carriage excluding one, with these not being gendered unlike the WESTBahn KISS 3. For a standard toilet, this isn't too bad and is more spacious than it looks. I've never really had an issue with Deutsche Bahn toilet cleanliness, so good to see this trend continuing. There are also coat hooks next to the door, and everything else was in working order. As for the other carriage, it contains the much larger wheelchair accessible toilet, which is of course accompanied by a generous space for those with reduced mobility. This is Stadler after all. The trains also have excellent bike storage, again on the lower deck. Bikes are reservable for a small fee, being €12.66 on the full distance between Stuttgart and Zurich. We continue to peacefully cruise through southern Germany, and before long the fog becomes thicker as we approach Singen, our last stop in Germany, located just north of the German-Swiss border. This industrial city is located close to Lake Constance, with the Hohenwil being its famous landmark, a volcanic stub containing ruins of a fortress destroyed by French troops during Napoleonic Wars. Just outside is another twin-deck set. These trains could only go as far as Singen at the time of recording due to not having the license to operate in Switzerland, though this has now been obtained since recording this video, hence why the 6-car variant of the KISS will be the first to leave Deutsche Bahn in the coming months. Not long after leaving Singen, we finally crossed the border into Switzerland, though sadly the bad weather also seems to have crossed with us. Still, we do get to enjoy the sight of passing several cars and lorries on the road parallel to us. That is, until we slow down slightly on the approach to our final stop of Schaffhausen. This is one of the 4 towns in Switzerland located entirely on the northern side of the Rhine, and is definitely on my list of places to properly visit at some point, with the reason for this being apparent shortly after leaving the station. To the left is the Rhine Falls, the largest and most powerful waterfall in Europe, formed during the last ice age between 14,000 and 17,000 years ago. This is a major tourist attraction, particularly during the summer months when snowmelt from the Alps increases the water flow, and whilst the weather isn't spectacular given I made this journey during the winter, we can still enjoy the views from this double-decker train as we reach the home stretch to Zurich. So, to summarise, should Deutsche Bahn really be getting rid of these trains? Well, having tried both the twin decks and the KISS Intercity 2, I personally prefer the KISS for use on Deutsche Bahn's IC routes, but I do see their logic in the sense that the trains have costly maintenance all the way in Vienna, and the lack of capacity isn't ideal. However, surely Deutsche Bahn could have arranged for maintenance to have moved to Germany? Or better, mix the 4 and 6 car units into a common pool and run them in multiple when required? Those are just some ideas for better optimisation of the fleet, not that it matters now though. As for the future of the Deutsche Bahn KISS, well, they won't be going too far away. Having been put up for sale in January by Deutsche Bahn, Austria's ÖBB recently confirmed that they had secured the purchase of all 17 units and they'll be used on Railjet stopping services between Vienna and Salzburg, with the 6 car units re-entering service from autumn 2025, though one, strangely enough, is already working with ÖBB on shuttles between Vienna Hauptbahnhof and Vienna Airport. ÖBB has ordered its own variant of the KISS, the Railjet 3, for such services. However, this purchase will facilitate ÖBB's network growth and ease capacity pressures, so at least they won't be rotting in storage like other new fleets I know of. For this trip, I was travelling on my first class Interrail pass. Reservations are not compulsory in both Germany and Switzerland, so I just hopped on board with no additional costs. Prices on this route are as low as €14.99 in second class and €29.99 in first class, though these are dependent on demand, so I'd only go for first class if you want a bit more privacy, otherwise there's no real benefit. We've now reached the end of the line at Zürich Hauptbahnhof, where we arrived 6 minutes late. If you're a regular Deutsche Bahn user, you'll know this is them on a good day. Now you've heard from me, I want to hear from you. What do you think of the Deutsche Bahn Stadler KISS? What are your thoughts on the sale to ÖBB, and do you think Deutsche Bahn should have kept them? Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and share it to aid the channel's growth, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. I have a few hours before my connecting TGV to Paris, whilst our train makes its way back to Stuttgart for its returning service, so it's now time to look around a bit and get some breakfast. Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.